were fortunate to be starting out at a time when actually Hollywood was sort of in chaos, because the old studio system was falling apart and they didn't know what was coming next. So the idea that they could make inexpensive films made by ex-film students and so forth was interesting to them. We started as screenwriters, as did many people in those days. So we were actually working on on American Graffiti, and we had written the treatments, and George got us the deal to write the script at United Artists, and simultaneously our agent left the agency and became a producer, and called us and said, "I've raised some money. It's not a lot of money, but you know, you can make your own film. The only stipulation is it has to be a horror film. And is that okay?" And we said, "That's great, you know, and do you have a horror film?" "No, but give us 2 weeks and we'll come up with something." So we backed out of writing the script of American Graffiti, made this movie, and then actually a year later at least, George came back to us and asked us to write the final script of American Graffiti. But in between we made the Messiah of Evil. I loved sort of the 30s horror films. I liked the Universal horror films, and I liked you know, the Frankenstein and the Dracula movies, and but I wasn't really a sort of a late 60s, 70s horror film fan. I also, when I was a kid, I loved H.P. Lovecraft, so I think that comes through. But I think what influenced us, having just finished film school not long before, was sort of art films, you know, Italian films and films, Antonioni, Godard, things like that. So the film has sort of a strange, sort of pretentious art film quality at the same time as trying to be a horror film.
July 2nd. These grotesque images keep crowding in on me. At night I find myself wandering alone in town, catching glimpses of horrid animals I know can't be there.
With the voiceover, with the painted sets, with the strange look at Los Angeles, you're sort of trying to do, it sounds ridiculous, what Antonioni did with, you know, the way he used landscape in his films. And then the French were very, very heavy into voiceover and into very kind of literary allusions. So, I mean, that's what we were interested in. It had nothing to do with, you know, what the investors wanted to do.
The picture was made during a huge lull in the aerospace industry. So a lot of the extras in the movie are unemployed aerospace workers that were found at unemployment. I'm in the movie also. I play a ghoul in the supermarket that I'm walking through the aisles as Anitra looks down the aisle and she sees me walking, and then I stop and look at her and then continue on.
Well, I think in this particular case, in Messiah of Evil, it was just that we had a chance to make a movie, and you know, you did what you could. It was interesting, it was the same, Peter Bogdanovich had a chance to make a movie from working with Roger Corman, and you know, ended up doing some Roger Corman, and then he made Targets because they gave him Boris Karloff for a weekend, and you know, we were just trying to do what we could.
And I think Francis Coppola did Dimension 13. I mean,
Dementia 13. Yeah.
Yeah, there was a whole tradition of film students going from film school to some kind of horror film. Jonathan Demme did a horror film for Roger Corman. You know, so it was really sort of the path you went to try to make a movie.
Hello there. Fill her up?
$2. No knock.
Yes, sir.
I didn't find Benny. Benny was found at unemployment, I believe. But I used to pick Benny up from his house to drive him to the set.
The gas station was out in Calabasas, or out that way, and the owner of the gas station, as we were shooting, was drinking, and the caterer, who was African American, And as the gas station owner had nothing to do but sit around, and he started, complaining about blacks, and it turned out that he was a racist, and the only way that this could be dealt with was to have the caterer move everything from the gas station some distance away, the other side of the road or whatever it was. And I mean, it was just one of those things that you remember.
The Fox Venice, we had so many problems shooting because it's huge inside, and it was too big, and the walls were so far apart. It was very hard to light, and it just turned out that day was a disaster. It was a total washout. The only part of that day that's still left and in the movie is the shot of Gloria and the ticket booth outside, the exterior.
We showed it to everybody after it was made, and we ran out of money, and we had, done our first cut, and we tried to raise the money to finish it, so I'm sure he saw it. I actually knew him because in '69, I think I was working at American International Pictures, and he was, one of their star directors, so I got to meet him there. No, we took Messiah of Evil everywhere to try to get it finished, and we just couldn't do it.
And then our agent said to us, our agent Jeff Berg, who's now head of ICM, he said, guys, I just don't think this is a really bright idea, taking around this film. I mean, we're not getting a really great reaction to it. So if you can imagine showing this film at 20th Century Fox in that period of Paramount, it was ridiculous.
So eventually we you stopped, we had actually taken the work print out of Technicolor because there were legal battles. The original investors were fighting each other. So we just took the work print and finished it as far as we could get. And then they called one day and they said, listen, the legal battles are over. Could you please give us back the work print? So we delivered it back to them, and they ended up putting the music on and recutting the film a little bit. And especially at the end, because we hadn't really finished shooting it, so they sort of created an ending.
I was really very upset that we didn't get to shoot our last great scene, which explained the whole story. So, I mean, that was kind of a devastating filmic experience.
When I get involved, Gloria and Willard, Gloria, my sister, was producing, Willard was directing, and they had no choice. They had to ask me. Every movie, whether it's large or small, is like going to war. And there's always, it's always a battle, but all I know is the battle's going to end. So I have to keep that in mind. And all I remember, the hours were long, and blood, sweat, and tears. But we were having a good time, and we were young.
Joseph Lang? Do I know who he is? We do get magazines in Point Dume, which some of us can even read.
Well, I meant I'm looking for him. And I thought maybe you knew him personally.
Point Dume isn't an artist colony. I heard he did take people out there, mostly women, but they weren't from Point Dume.
I went to see it with the woman who was then my companion, and we were sitting up in the balcony, and right in front of us were these two women. I mean, it was the kind of theater where you would go to rest when you were shopping. There were these big old theaters, and they were playing a lot of genre films. And I came on the screen, and I was pale, and my voice was shaking because I was nervous. And this woman turned to her friend and said, "He gives me the creeps."
Well, it's interesting. I mean, it's sort of wonderful to read these interpretations. I mean, none of them probably had anything to do with why we did the film. But I think because it's such an odd film and doesn't make total sense, that people can sort of interpret it the way they want to and see things in it that I think, you know, I think pictorially it gets people to be very creative about what the film must be about. But it's fun, you know, it's fun to read these interpretations.
And I don't think that even if the artist's intent isn't what naturally the people are reading into it, it doesn't matter, because it may be there sort of subconsciously, even though you haven't really articulated it that way. I mean, it's true, you know, Vietnam was on everybody's, I mean, was a heavy load to bear.